Fluent, period. What if the thing that looks like discipline is actually destroying your progress? Think about that for a second. What if the reason you still don't speak English confidently is not because you're bad at English? What if the real problem is that you're waiting to feel ready, waiting to know more words, waiting to stop making mistakes, waiting to sound smarter, waiting to be perfect, and while you wait, months pass, sometimes years. Here's the scary part. Most people never realize this is happening to them because perfectionism doesn't look dangerous. It looks responsible. It looks intelligent. It looks organized. But quietly, silently, it keeps people stuck in the exact same place. And today, we're going to expose it. Because there's a reason some people improve fast while others stay trapped for years, even though they study every single day. And no, it's not talent. It's not IQ. And it's definitely not luck. It's something much simpler. And once you see it, you may never think about learning the same way again. So stay with me until the end, because one idea in this video could completely change the way you learn English, work, study, and even live your life. And while you listen, ask yourself one honest question. How many opportunities have you already lost because you were afraid to be imperfect? Let's begin. Perfectionism is one of the most misunderstood problems in the world because most people think perfectionism means having high standards. But that's not really true. Wanting to do something well is healthy. Wanting to improve is healthy. Working hard is healthy. Perfectionism is different. Perfectionism is when your fear of doing something badly becomes stronger than your desire to grow. Read that again in your mind. Your fear becomes stronger than your growth. That changes everything. Because now, instead of taking action, you hesitate. Instead of practicing, you prepare forever. Instead of learning through mistakes, you avoid mistakes completely. And at first, this behavior feels smart. You tell yourself things like, I just need more time. I need to study a little more first. I'm not ready yet. I'll start when I feel more confident. But here's the truth nobody tells you. Confidence does not come before action. Confidence comes after action. That means if you keep waiting to feel ready before you begin, you may never begin at all. This is exactly what happens to many English learners. Maybe this has happened to you too. You understand English videos. You study grammar. You learn vocabulary. You even know what you want to say in your head. But when it's time to speak, you freeze. Suddenly your mind becomes empty. You start thinking, what if I say something wrong? What if my pronunciation sounds bad? What if people laugh at me? So you stay silent. And silence feels safe. But silence is expensive. Because every moment you avoid practice, you lose growth. That's the trap of perfectionism. It protects your ego in the short term, while secretly damaging your future in the long term. And the worst part? Many perfectionists don't even realize they are perfectionists. They just think they are careful. But there's a big difference between being careful and being controlled by fear. Let me show you something interesting. Imagine two people learning English. Person number one speaks immediately. Their grammar is messy. Their pronunciation is not perfect. Sometimes they forget words, but they keep speaking anyway. Person number two studies silently for years. They want every sentence to sound perfect before they speak. Now, guess what usually happens? After 1 year, the first person often becomes much more fluent. Not because they were smarter, but because they practiced without fear. Meanwhile, the perfectionist becomes trapped inside their own head. Thinking, checking, analyzing, overthinking, but not actually improving. Because language is not learned only through studying. Language is learned through using, and using requires mistakes. That's why perfectionism becomes a silent growth killer. Growth is naturally messy. A baby does not learn to walk perfectly on the first try. Imagine if babies were perfectionists. They would fall once and say, nope, I'll try again in 6 months after I fully master balance. Sounds ridiculous, right? But adults do this all the time, especially in learning. They refuse to sound bad. They refuse to look inexperienced. They refuse to make mistakes publicly. So they never truly improve. And here's something even deeper. Perfectionism is rarely about excellence. Most of the time, it's about fear. Fear of judgment. Fear of embarrassment. Fear of rejection. Fear of looking stupid. Fear of not being enough. That's why perfectionism often starts very early in life. Maybe as a child, you were praised only when you succeeded. Maybe mistakes were treated like failures. Maybe teachers embarrassed students for wrong answers. Maybe your family expected you to always be the best. Slowly, your brain learned something dangerous. If I'm not perfect, I lose value. That belief follows many people into adulthood. And social media makes it even worse. Every day, people scroll through perfect photos, perfect bodies, perfect success stories, perfect English speakers. And without noticing, they begin comparing their real life to someone else's highlight reel. Suddenly, normal progress feels invisible. People think, if I can't be amazing immediately, why even try? That mindset destroys more dreams than failure ever could. Because failure at least teaches you something. Perfectionism teaches you nothing. It keeps you frozen. Let's talk about procrastination for a moment. Most people think procrastination means laziness. But sometimes, procrastination is perfectionism wearing a disguise. Think about it. Have you ever delayed starting something because you wanted the perfect plan, the perfect timing, the perfect conditions, the perfect idea? That's perfectionism. And it sounds logical in your head. But the truth is brutal. Perfect conditions almost never exist. The people who grow are usually not the people who wait. They're the people who start before they feel ready. Look at almost any successful person. Most of them began while feeling nervous, confused, or imperfect. The difference is that they moved anyway. Action creates clarity, not the other way around. This is important for English learners too. Some students spend years collecting information. Grammar books, apps, vocabulary lists, courses, videos, but they almost never practice speaking. Why? Because speaking reveals imperfection, and perfectionists hate revealing imperfection. So they stay in preparation mode forever. But preparation without action becomes a prison. And maybe this next part will surprise you. Perfectionism doesn't only slow growth. It also destroys enjoyment. Because when everything must be perfect, nothing feels satisfying. You finish one task and immediately focus on the flaws. You achieve something, but instead of feeling proud, you think, it could have been better. Perfectionists often struggle to celebrate progress because their minds are trained to search for what's missing. That's exhausting. And eventually, many people burn out, not because they worked too little, but because they demanded too much from themselves for too long. Now here's a question I want you to really think about. What would happen if you gave yourself permission to be bad at something temporarily? Seriously, what if you allowed yourself to sound awkward in English for a while? What if you accepted beginner mistakes as part of the process instead of signs of failure? Your progress would probably explode because fear would lose power over you. One of the biggest lies perfectionism tells people is this: mistakes mean you're not capable. But reality says the opposite. Mistakes usually mean you are learning. Think about the first time you tried to ride a bicycle. You probably failed, maybe many times. But imagine if after falling once you decided, well, I'm clearly terrible at this. You would never learn. Yet adults do this constantly with skills, languages, careers, and personal growth. They expect immediate competence. And when reality feels uncomfortable, they quit. But discomfort is not proof you are failing. Discomfort is often proof you are growing. That changes everything. Now, I want to tell you a short story. There was a guy named Daniel. Daniel wanted to become fluent in English. He studied every day for almost 2 years. He watched videos, read books, memorized vocabulary. On paper, he looked like a serious student. But there was one problem. Daniel almost never spoke English. Whenever someone invited him to practice, he said, maybe later. I still need more vocabulary. My pronunciation isn't good enough yet. Secretly, Daniel believed fluent people never made mistakes. Then one day, something happened. He joined an online English conversation group by accident. He thought he would only listen. But suddenly the teacher asked him a simple question. Daniel panicked. His heart started beating fast. He answered with broken English. Wrong grammar. Wrong pronunciation. Long pauses. He felt embarrassed. But then something unexpected happened. Nobody laughed. Nobody attacked him. In fact, other students also made mistakes. Some spoke better than him. Some spoke worse. But everyone kept talking anyway. And after that class, Daniel realized something shocking. The people improving the fastest were not the people speaking perfectly. They were the people speaking consistently. That changed his mindset forever. He made a new rule. Speak first. Improve later. At first, it felt uncomfortable. But slowly, speaking became easier. His confidence grew. His vocabulary improved naturally. His listening improved too. Not because he became perfect, but because he stopped demanding perfection before taking action. That lesson changed his entire life. And honestly, it can change yours too. Now, if you're still listening right now, that tells me something important. You care about improving yourself. And that already puts you ahead of many people. So before we continue, take 2 seconds and subscribe to Fluent, period. Because on this channel, we're not trying to sound perfect. We're trying to become real, confident English speakers step by step. And if you stay consistent here, your English will absolutely improve over time. Now, let's continue because this next part may be the most important idea in the entire video. Perfectionism often sounds like ambition, but healthy ambition and perfectionism are not the same thing. Healthy ambition says, I want to improve. Perfectionism says, I must never fail. Healthy ambition allows mistakes. Perfectionism treats mistakes like personal disasters. Healthy ambition creates energy. Perfectionism creates anxiety. Healthy ambition pushes you forward. Perfectionism keeps you stuck. That distinction matters, because many people think their perfectionism is helping them succeed. Sometimes it does create short-term results, but often at a terrible emotional cost. Stress, overthinking, fear, exhaustion, low self-esteem, and eventually, many perfectionists reach a dangerous point. Nothing they do ever feels enough. Imagine living like that every day. No peace, no satisfaction, no joy in progress. Just endless pressure. That's not growth. That's emotional punishment. And sadly, many people normalize it. But life becomes much lighter when you stop trying to earn your worth through perfection. Because your value as a person is not connected to flawless performance. You're allowed to learn slowly. You're allowed to struggle. You're allowed to make mistakes publicly. That's called being human, not being a failure. In fact, some of the most confident people in the world make mistakes constantly. The difference is simple. They recover quickly. Perfectionists think mistakes are proof they should. Stop. Confident learners think mistakes are feedback. That mindset shift is powerful. So how do you actually overcome perfectionism? Not perfectly, of course, but realistically. The first step is awareness. You must notice when perfectionism is controlling your decisions. Ask yourself, am I avoiding this because I truly need more preparation or because I'm afraid of looking imperfect? That question alone can reveal a lot. The second step is taking smaller actions. Perfectionists often feel overwhelmed because they imagine huge expectations. So reduce the size of the task. Want to improve speaking? Don't try giving a 30-minute speech. Start with 1 sentence. 1 sentence today, 2 tomorrow. That's how confidence grows. Not through giant perfect moments, but through repeated imperfect action. Third, stop measuring yourself against experts. This is extremely important. Many English learners compare their level to native speakers or advanced learners. That's unfair. You are comparing your beginning to someone else's middle or end. Of course, you'll feel discouraged. Instead, compare yourself to your past self. Can you understand more English now than 6 months ago? Can you say more words? Build more sentences? Understand more videos? That's progress. And progress matters more than perfection. Another important step is learning how to tolerate embarrassment. This sounds strange, but it's true. Growth often feels embarrassing at first. When you start speaking a new language, you may sound awkward. When you start going to the gym, you may feel weak. When you start a new skill, you may look inexperienced. That's normal. Beginners are supposed to be beginners. The problem is that perfectionists want beginner comfort with expert performance. But real life doesn't work that way. You earn confidence through repetition, not through hiding. And here's another powerful idea. Done is often better than perfect. Think about how many dreams never happen because people keep improving instead of finishing. Books never published. Businesses never started. Videos never uploaded. Ideas never shared. Perfectionism kills creativity before the world ever sees it. So sometimes the smartest thing you can do is finish imperfectly and move forward. Momentum matters. A small imperfect action today is usually more valuable than a perfect plan you never use. And remember this too. Even native English speakers make mistakes. All the time. They forget words, use wrong grammar, change sentences halfway through speaking. But they continue talking. That's why fluency is not perfection. Fluency is communication. That realization frees many learners because suddenly the goal changes. You stop trying to sound like a robot and you start trying to connect with people. That's what language is really for. Connection, not perfection. Now, let's be honest about something difficult. Perfectionism can feel safe. If you never try fully, you never fully fail, right? But that safety comes with a hidden cost. Regret. Years later, many people look back and realize they stayed small because they were too afraid to look imperfect. And regret is heavy, much heavier than embarrassment. Embarrassment lasts minutes. Regret can last decades. So maybe the real question is not, what if I fail? Maybe the better question is, what happens if I never try? That question changes everything. Because most growth in life comes from doing things before you feel fully ready. Speaking before confidence. Starting before certainty. Trying before mastery. And yes, sometimes you will fail. Sometimes you will sound awkward. Sometimes people may judge you. Sometimes things won't work. But that's still better than remaining trapped forever in preparation mode. At least action gives you a chance to grow. Perfectionism gives you nothing except the illusion of safety. And honestly, the people you admire most probably became successful through hundreds of imperfect attempts you never saw. You only see the final version. You don't see the bad first drafts, the awkward early conversations, the embarrassing mistakes. But those moments existed. Every expert was once a beginner who looked inexperienced. Every fluent speaker once struggled with basic sentences. Every confident person once felt insecure. Growth is not clean. Growth is chaotic. But chaos is part of transformation. And maybe that's what you need to hear today. You do not need permission to begin. You do not need perfect grammar before speaking English. You do not need perfect confidence before trying. You do not need perfect knowledge before starting. You just need movement. Small movement. Consistent movement. Honest movement. Because tiny actions repeated daily create massive change over time. One sentence today. One conversation tomorrow. One uncomfortable moment at a time. That's how people transform. Not overnight, but gradually. And the beautiful thing is this. Once you stop fearing mistakes so much, learning becomes lighter. You laugh more. You experiment more. You improve faster. Because your brain relaxes. Fear blocks learning. Curiosity accelerates learning. That's why children often learn languages faster emotionally than adults. Children make mistakes constantly and continue anyway. Adults make one mistake and overthink it for 3 days. So maybe becoming better at English is not only about learning more vocabulary. Maybe it's also about becoming emotionally comfortable with imperfection. That's a powerful idea. Before we finish, I want you to imagine something. Imagine where your English could be 1 year from now. If you stopped waiting to be perfect. Imagine if you spoke a little every day. Practiced even with mistakes. Allowed yourself to sound imperfect temporarily. Your future self would probably thank you. Because progress compounds. Small efforts grow. Small habits grow. Small courage grows. But only if you act. Not if you wait forever. So here's your challenge after this video. Do one imperfect thing today. Speak one sentence in English. Write one message. Join one conversation. Start one project. And do it without trying to make it flawless. Just do it honestly. Because every time you choose action over perfection, you weaken the fear. And every time you weaken the fear, you become freer. That freedom changes lives. As we finish today's episode, remember this. Perfectionism sounds productive, but often it's just fear wearing professional clothes. Real growth is messy. Real learning includes mistakes. Real confidence is built through action, not through waiting. So stop asking, "What if I'm not ready?" and start asking, "What could happen if I finally begin?" Thank you for spending this time with me here on Fluent, period. And remember, you do not become fluent by being perfect. You become fluent by continuing, even when you're imperfect. See you in the next episode.